And again, this is a seminar that we're doing for Monday through Thursday on, for lack of a better term, I think we're calling it community informatics. This whole idea has gone through a lot of terms, and so this one seems to be one of the ones that people are using now. But the next person, and today, the structure of today is basically, we presented an overview of what people at UT were doing. Now Jorge González from the Laboratory for Complex Communication at the Autonomous University of Mexico City is going to present an overview of some of his work, which covers some of this, but in many ways is quite a bit broader. Jorge has been doing lots of things. Some to do with technology, some to do with all sorts of social and cultural aspects of communication. So, and Jorge, I think, is one of the more interesting thinkers, both theoretically and methodologically, around the Americas, and maybe more, who knows. At any rate, I've liked Jorge and his work for a long time, and so I wanted very much to have him kind of present some of what he's doing. And then, again, today's kind of the overviews, and then we'll have a lot of time over the next few days for talk. But Jorge, is it okay with you if people ask questions while you're going?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. So if you have something you really want to say or ask, I guess put up your hand.
Sure.
But, all right, Jorge González, originally professor of sociology, was it? No.
I'm like a street dog.
Yeah, okay. Professor of lots of things. And so anthropology, sociology, communications, around in there. And anyway, but a very, very, very smart man, good friend. So, Jorge, time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a fascinating presentation. I'm really glad to be here again. That precisely was my room when I was teaching here, and invited also by Joe and JD and friends up here. And I'm really glad to be here and to share and listen and talk, dialogue some of our work, you and our work. So we have just finished last week, a week ago, our first international colloquium on Cibercultur and emerging local knowledge communities. That sounds like, could be like, ooh, sounds like quite interesting. But probably some ideas about what exactly I think our work can fit a little bit with your interests, and especially the interest of this meeting that I understood always as an opportunity for dialoguing and asking questions and showing some ideas and sharing some findings and problems. So first of all, after a long time of researching and struggling also in a country like Mexico, and I should say also that I have just came back to Mexico, my original city of where I was born, after working 17 years in a very small and living peasant town in Colima. The name is Comala. It's very famous, the name, because it's the place of the novel of Pedro Páramo. But Comala really exists. 9,000 inhabitants. It's just peasant people, and services included that. So the thing is that living there and working in the Programa Cultura, it's the first president of the Programa Cultura. Is social research and sociocultural research specialized in contemporary culture in Mexico and Latin America. That was founded in 1985. And I left Programa Cultura. I was invited to teach to Barcelona in 2000. And from Barcelona, I was also invited to came back to my university, Iberoamericana University in Mexico City. And there, I founded with some friends the LabCOMplex. I said that because specific historical, I would say antecedente.
Antecedent and
Yeah,
antecedents.
Antecedents. So, Mexican government, especially the Ministry of Education, that we call Secretaría, the Secretaría de Educación Pública, in 1998, asked us to conduct a special study facing one practical and very important problem that they have having at the time. As you know, probably you know, Mexico as a country is a very complex orographic. Orographic is correct, full of mountains and geography has a very complex profile. So since 1960 something, the 60s, the Mexican government began a project of distance education, educación a distancia, using intensively telesecundarias specifically.
So this would be like distance ed secondary schools.
Yeah, secondary schools using television. All over the country, especially in the ethnic and indigenous zones and mountains and deserts. So you can find at the secundaria with the cities in the coast of Oaxaca, in the coast of Sonora, in front of the Cortez Gulf. You can find also telesecundarias in the mountains in Oaxaca or in Puebla. So that was the first antecedent of the national program of distance education, Programa Nacional de Educación a Distancia. So the problem for the government was we have invested a huge amount of money in technology, but not only television in 1988, but in connectivity through internet. We have invested a lot of money in using televisions and video cassette and video technology, and they have invested a lot of money in networks, and also they have invested a lot of money in teachers of primary and secondary schools in order to train them to facilitate the process of using these technologies all over the country. But the problem was that those teachers, and I should say they were trained with probably very high standard of quality in terms of television, in terms of images, in terms of pedagogical programs, very, first level. But the problem, they had the problem of not having so much success after that effort. So they asked me as a group to research what is the problem, what is happening here. So we were invited to that. We designed a special project dealing with 7 states: Mexico, North, Center, whatever, and dealing with only with teachers that were trained. Trained teachers. Using education, or in the crossroad education and technology. Last incident in the Programa Cultura, one of the 3 areas of concentration in research was called cultural fronts. As part of my own development of theory and methodology regarding the way in which hegemony in society is constructed. is created closer to everyday life. So one of our lines of research was technology and culture since 1985. But that request of the SEP, the Minister of Education, led us to really go in depth in that line. So we designed that thing. And after mixed, multi-method study, field study, we found a number of issues very interesting. For one of them was that nevertheless the quality of the training and intensive training all over the country of the teachers in using technology for facilitating the dissemination and quality also of education, the records and the evaluation was really bad. That was something was happening here. And the finding was that the state was assuming that after the training, the people should change without considering a number of very important issues which we are founding. This is the introduction to the notion of Cibercultur. We call it Cibercultur in Spanish. Because they were teachers receiving contents, methods, techniques to use computers and whatever, but it was like, say in Spanish, it was like making marcas en el agua, no? Rayas en el agua. How to say that?
It's like trying to make
drawing on the water.
Drawing on the water. Why? Well, they have an amazing amount of money invested there, and this were drawing in the water. So the problem, we finally found that there was something here that was totally ignored. And that, I call that the technological competence that was not increased only by the training. It has to do more, and we tested, we proved that with history, with trajectories, theories, with social capital, also with social relationships, and also with specific cultural capital, with specific, according to the habits, was completely displaced the expected trajectory of training and improvement of the quality of the education. And even more, there was also some problems of power relationships into the classroom, because when the teachers came with that issue, with that thing, and the other one in front of students, even in the lowest, part, had a very, a much more open and easily way to access and to handle technology than the teacher. So the teachers began to think, and it's an ideology, that technology will be displacing themselves in a very short time. So they began to be really reluctant and rejecting technology. Nevertheless, they were trained to do so. So we could hypothesize a little bit about that. But the finding was that if they cannot, if they don't have this network, this set of relationships regarding technology and knowledge, it will be very difficult to really make a thicker understanding and grounded use of technology regarding education. So by that time, I should say, I presented the report to the minister in 1998. We don't have, by that time, developed the theoretical frame of Cibercultur, but now we have. Now we have. I mean, I'm pushing a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, now I can say that these teachers, because of the trajectories, because of the social origins, because of their own technological biographies, that we have specifically used that technique as a transformation of that in order to understand how was been in a lifetime when the life or any or all of these professors, teachers were shaped or not by technologies. That was also at the bottom of the Margarita Mas project of dissertation, her PhD dissertation and then publication. So generations mixed with technology, and not only generation by age, but also generations as a specific part of a social and structural moment of the country. So that was, I will not say a little much more about that, but just thinking about that. So we use intensively ethnographic studies of the precise moment, the social situation, I mean, a social context observed, described, and classified in which technology, teacher, and students, and academic program or content curriculum was exactly that. So we observed in the 7 cities 4 months daily with the people, and then finally, I mean, we we understood a little bit, and we said to the state, to the Minister of Education, we have, I mean, using that instrument that I call a technological competence, which I created index, an index of that, running from 15 points to 0, and the media, how to say
the average.
The average, the national average of our study of range of from 0 to 15. I mean, this is total technological competence perceived, and no technological competence. The media, the average of our study was 5.4. These were the teachers that were trained. So something was happening. I mean, and let me tell you that you can consult those contents in the ILCE, is the Institute of Instituto Latinoamericano de Comunicación Educativa. The ILCE is providing really first world content. You cannot imagine, it's a really good one. So what's happening here? So 1 year after, with some of my last students in Colima, they tested the instrument, and but with different population. They studied students from high school to graduate students in Colima, Universidad de Colima, and the average goes 4 more points. So, what does it mean, that kind of average? It's amazing. Something is happening really bad. It's not functioning at all. So, from that first, input, we began to think and rethink and elaborate. I mean, our reflections on the observables we have produced, and finally, we arrived to the concept of Cibercultur. So I will be in just a minute. This is the last part of the history. I just wanted to tell you, because if not, this is not coming from the idea of something, but really from nice experience of research, very frustrating for the state, but very stimulating for us. So, the LabCOMplex is a kind of social research unit, or more interdisciplinary research unit that deals with the concept of Cibercultur. We are using this A. That is very important because we knew that if you go to the internet and Google whatever and say Cibercultura with the A, normal A, you can find more. I don't know. Last time I did that was less than 200,000 sites. If you type cyberculture in English, you can find 800,000 sites, and the most of them are dealing with that kind of that is not the kind of a concept, that problem of cyberspace. Cyberculture is what is happening in cyberspace. Virtual communities, virtual identities, blah blah blah. Coming from William Gibson, novel of Neuromancer. He defined it. Cyberspace like this collective hallucination that happening between machines. If you remember that. So, but we did not. We don't want to use that concept because it's very interesting. But we are dealing with a different thing in our countries. It's totally different. So, for us, Cibercultura could be understood as a couple of meanings in the sense of object of study. We understand Cibercultura like we want to identify that object of study. We are a research professional unit in Mexico. We are supposed to produce scientific data, scientific interpretation about that. So we want to study the relationship between technology and we call the symbolic ecologies. Of our populations. They're quite different in terms of attitude regarding technology, in terms of memory, in terms of the way in which we eat and we experience the world, and so on. So this what we call symbolic ecologies, facing with technology, but technology not understood as tools or machines, but as a vector. Vector is in English, correct? Mm-hmm. That is strength with direction, with orientation. Because in the history of a country, I could say probably the countries, maybe in Brazil, probably in Chile or in Venezuela, because of the social organization of the world and that haven't just begin in the 90s or 80s with the globalization. It has a long history behind that. The way in which our population and cultures, our symbolic ecologies, relate with this kind of technology should be understood in a precisely historical and multidimensional way. That's a way in which in Mexico you cannot find, I wouldn't buy, of course, a computer like that with the trademark González. There's no González computers. There's no Fuentes, televisions. There's no Piñón microphones. But why not? The names are in Japanese or are in English, or Toshiba or Dell or Hewlett Packard. That is part of that vector. So the way in which we are we want to study that in terms of precisely digital technologies and computer-mediated communications. That is that we want to study in depth in terms of study. But at the same time, the lack of something was happening when all this, all those thousands of teachers in Mexico failed in the Minister of Education purpose, aim, and so we began recovering some also experiences from our background, and we also can understand Cibercultur as a value of development, economic value or assets of development. That's something, Cibercultur, that's something that can be developed in order to deal in a different way, not the normal way of just receiving that stream, that force, like technology has done in history, and we can develop that. I mean, I'm not using the Latin American concept of development, and we are more based here in at least two very strong sources. One of that is the works of the Genève cycle, mainly by Piaget, Jean Piaget, and my colleague in the same unit, Rolando Garcia. And developing also from what we can call the Moscow school. Mainly, the most known thing is Lev Vygotsky, but also Luria and the well-known Bakhtin and some others. For those of you who are not familiar with this, probably you have read some article, amazing, or book of a British neurologist that is living in New York. His name is Oliver Sacks. This is a famous film. I don't know the right director, but it's Robert De Niro and Robin Williams.
Awakening.
And Robin Williams is Oliver Sacks. This is the PhD dissertation on Oliver Sacks as a neurologist facing a psychiatric hospital. So it's very interesting. So Sacks is the same. It comes from the same. Sacks is a student of Lurie. Well, about what? About how something like Vygotsky called the. Sorry, I want to translate them. Proximal developmental zone. It's a concept that Vygotsky and his colleagues developed in the early stages of the Russian Revolution. So also for my information, so it was a pity, but when Vladimir Ilyich Lenin died and Joseph Stalin arrived to the power, since Stalin was a linguistic, he decided to erase any trace of Vygotsky and the Moscow school in Russia. So it was totally, sacados, thrown out from the libraries, and Vygotsky was rediscovered, reprinted when Stalin died. With Khrushchev, the 50s something, and translated into English really late in probably the 60s. And also the problem was that Vygotsky was translated into English and other languages, the scientific field in psychology by that time was totally dominated by Skinner and Watson and the behaviorism. So, for my surprise, until the 90s, more or less the 90s, the last decade of the last century, there's a number of different groups and individuals developing that, developed the ideas of Vygotsky regarding that. So that kind of, I will say that in a minute, what exactly could be developed to deal with that. So we're not using a biological or sociological, political, but development in terms of crisis and reorganization of cognitive structures. I mean, I think that Vygotsky have read Piaget, but not Piaget Vygotsky because of the time. But no, but the problem is not. But the thing is that sorry, I'm just finishing that part. Is that we can use intensively that concept to understand the way in which some kind of cultural competences, technological competences, and social competences, linguistic competences could be not only studied but facilitated to go further. And if you remember, probably we have the 11th the 11th thesis on Ludwig Feuerbach from a couple of Germans, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The 11th thesis on the philosophy of Ludwig Feuerbach said that, help me to translate that, los filósofos se han dedicado, let's say in Spanish, los filósofos se han dedicado a interpretar de múltiples formas la realidad. Pero de lo que se trata es de transformarla.
Okay. Philosophers have devoted themselves to interpret the reality in multiple forms.
Yeah.
However, what we really, the point here is to transform reality.
Yeah, that is the 11th thesis and a little bit Feuerbach. That's very interesting. So I found that all of a sudden, everybody in Mexico, some others, trying to interpret what is happening there. But that also is interesting because for us as a unit, it's challenging our way in which we assume our position, a very privileged position in Mexico, in a university like UNAM. So we can also develop technology for development of those kinds of things. So now we arrive, so Cibercultur we understand as an object study and the value for development, value of assets. This is not the value, but in Spanish it's valor de desarrollo. Could be understood. Value for or of development. We can develop that. So, sorry, I'm just finishing that part, and we understand that Cibercultur as a value of development, as the synthesis of three kind of cultures, of the development of three kind of cultures. Culture of information, a culture of communication, and last but not the least, culture of knowledge. So from this point, developing, I'm just trying to narrate our path to the theorization of this thing. Because we understand the word in three different meanings linked to this. Cyber, the word cyber, you know, of course, cyber came from the Greek. Kubernetes, pilot, ¿cómo se llama el timonel? The people in charge of the, what's timonel? Steerman. Or steerwoman, whatever.
Pilot on a ship who guides it.
Yeah, no? That was the meaning. I mean, cyber has two meanings attached. Control and steering. Both. The most diffuse is the first one. It's control. This is the meaning of Gibson, William Gibson, in cyborg, and all this concept of science fiction. How they science fiction?
Science fiction.
Sorry, science fiction. But that control cannot be accomplished with the ability of steering, and steering has to do a lot with listening. Listening, because if you have just sail one time in your life, you cannot sail. We cannot sail against the sea, against the water. We have to sail with the water, with the wind, with a lot of elements. And the steerman needs to really be open and listen constantly. And the notion of feedback comes from there. And I was also shocked, probably I have said that before, I don't know, shocked by, the man, the intelligence that gives name to the cybernetics is Russian Norbert Wiener. I was shocked, believe me, I was shocked when I noticed that Norbert Wiener wrote Cybernetics, or the communication between animals and men, in La Colonia Condesa in Mexico. What? In the forest? Wiener? Yeah. Why? Mexico is Latin America. Is the place of the reflection of cybernetics. What's that? And then just because of that, because of his relationship with a Mexican, very famous, and every single edition of Cybernetics, the book, is dedicated to Arturo Rosenbluth. Arturo Rosenbluth is a physician, physician, and studied at UNAM, then went to France to finish, and then from France, they came to Harvard to make Harvard to make a postdoc staying, and really was Arturo Rosenbluth was really smart. Rosenbluth, sorry. Arturo. And because of an age like that, with that in these times, being a Mexican or Latino or immigrant make sense. It's equal to be criminal. And the 1st of May we saw something there. Okay. But because of the same reason, in the McCarthy ages, I mean the post-war, the Cold War, Norbert Wiener, a Russian mathematician, and Rosenbluth got really he was the best in the department of physiology, neurophysiology in Harvard, and they was offered for a tenure, but he couldn't get that because he had to go out of the country because of McCarthy, and also Wiener, and went to Mexico and began to deal with cats. Was shocked. What I mean, my point is, control and steering is exactly not the same thing, but it's not only the negative thing. And believe me that the progressive ideas of Wiener, nothing to do with the Wiener have been sold to us, the father of the cybernetic, nothing to do. It's very sensitive to the Latin American Mexican situation, and the study of that was very interesting. So for us, Kubernetes is the ability of steering, okay? The ability of steering, first. Second, cultura. Latin, of course. Cultivare. Cultura is, how to say this? Cultivate.
Cultivate.
Cultivate, the same word in English. Cultivate. Doing things, making things in order to the land, to produce life, food, something. It's a kind of care, kind of relationship with earth in order to cultivate life. So, cultivating, something that could be cultivating, cultura, has also two meanings. The meaning of cultivar, cultivate, and the meaning of meaning, the universe of meaning.
Semantics.
PR, of symbolic, whatever, symbols, and so on. Because men, humans, not men, humans, we are the only species in the world, I think, until now, that in order to survive, we need to develop a second nature. This is culture, meaningful. If we don't develop that, and the roots of why we need the creation and recreation of that symbolic universes is neurological rooted in the work of Piaget, the work of Vygotsky, and some others, and so on. So we use this to cultivate, develop, and symbols. So the last part of the word, funny word, Cibercultura, that one, just saying in a minute. Tomlinson, the developer of the email, used that sign, and because it was the less used in the keyboards, so whatever. So the thing is that when I was here, probably here, I asked my students, what does this sign mean? So let's say at. How to name that in English? At. Or at? Just at? Yeah, at. No problem. No, just let me share with them. I share with them another, a listening experience of the name that in Spanish. Arroba. The name in Italian. Chiocciola. Even in Danish. Kanel. Kanel roll. Kanel. In French, escargot. Caracol. I don't know in Portuguese.
Snail.
In Portuguese. Arroba. Say, please. Listen. Arroba. Different symbolic experiences behind it. I'm not diminishing or at and we lost a lot of information, a lot of energy. Chiocciola, even worse. But we use that because of the analogy with the snail, with a caracol, because that caracol is a spiral. Spiral. And to place in the word the development of intelligence, because intelligence is never like a closed circle or like a negative feedback loop, more technically. But intelligence always works like a positive feedback loop that makes this thing. And then, so the more similar to that, you place the arroba there. What? What? Okay, this is the meaning of that. And because of that, the cultivation, the cultivation, the development of the culture of information, communication, and knowledge is precisely the development of intelligence. That has nothing to do with the IQ. Nothing to do. Because if you apply the IQ to a woman in southern Mexico, she's poor, she is woman, she is Indian, and she is whatever, beaten. Never, I mean, she could be like, I don't know, say in Spanish, débil mental poco profunda.
Oh my God.
Mentally weak.
Mentally challenged, we say.
Something like that. But that mentally challenged woman with, $2 and 5 elements is able to develop an answer to a problem, practical problem, to feed 15 people there. That is intelligence. The problem with that woman is she's not American. She's not a male. Two, aggregated problem. Third, she's not like Daniel Berthaud originally. She's not military engineering. And fourth, she's poor and Indian. I mean, there's nothing to do with that. Intelligence is a way of solving practical problems through or by means of questions. By means of questioning. A rat can solve the problem of living the maze, but not with questions. Men and women are the only that we can question things and add to the things something that some can call creativity. I'm not if it's true. Probably, if not, should be. Something asked Michelangelo Buonarroti, Master, how do you do to be so perfect? In sculpting? No.
Sculpture.
Sculpture.
The verb?
Sculpting.
Sculpting. How can you manage to do these things? And his so-called answer was, I only help me. I only
Take away.
take away the rest of the stone. What? So I thought that thing could be transformed in a beautiful piece of art. How? With intelligence, with creativity. The same thing. The same image. Not Michelangelo Buonarroti. So I'm switching Italian. But a primitive man walking, and all of a sudden, this is my weakest part. I didn't study design or architecture, but I will draw a mammoth leg. No, it's footprint. Mammoth footprint in the ground. So when that man or that woman go there and saw that a hole with some traces in the ground, said there was a mammoth. And it was right there. That is precisely the same act of creativity. I mean, the mammoth concept is not in the footprint. It's in an inferencia.
Inference.
It's an inference. Inference. Precisely the things that Piaget and Vygotsky studied. When a little baby begins to follow you, those of you who are mothers or fathers, we all were children, but it's amazing what the kid or the child just following you, identifying you, and following you. But in some stage of the children, of the child, something is in the middle of the baby and the mother, and it's blocking the site. And in that time, his mother vanished totally. And mother again, follow her, and just a block. When the baby begins to make that, the mother is here, the blocking object here, and the baby makes it. Is the born of the logics in terms of, this is the first inference. Exactly the same thing with the sculpture, the same thing with the footprint of the mammoth. So that thing, intelligence, is not questionary and solve and whatever, but the way in which human species solve practical problems. So our question is, how can we develop some kind of culture of these three things that we call Cibercultura in order to facilitate the people to solve their own practical problems developing this, using information? Until now, I have told a lot of things, probably acting a lot of things about Cibercultura without naming technology or computers. So first idea, developing Cibercultura has nothing to do with computers. Nothing to do with computers. But if we develop Cibercultura, the using of computers could be completely different. My image is like, I don't know here, I'm sure here too, but in this country, in this university too. But in Mexico, you can see all my colleagues in research asking for, asking for a huge mega computer with 3 billion exabyte. Exabyte. An exabyte is 1 plus 18 zeros. Exabyte of RAM memory to send email to you, the chat. Hey, how are you, man? Okay. Or you have $2,000, $1,000, whatever, invested in a machine that is like a typewriting machine. Typing machine. And we're not using that. We're using Ferrari Testarossa as a very good, poltrona, chair, or a living room, because it's leather and calm. You see that? Yeah. And the fascination of of technology uses it. Man, you have a machine to run. You have a machine to go. The tires could be spoiled. This is working. And the sub-utilization of the invested technology and equipment in our countries is amazing. But not because of the tools, because we have not developed a culture of information. So, what is culture of information? What is information for us in that meaning? Information is when we establish, that man, that Michelangelo, that woman, establish a link between some kind of experience and some kind of code. That, is the first link. So information is a relationship. It's not a thing. It's not a program or something. It's a kind of relationship. And that kind of using information for solving problems, when we ask questions, could be developed. So establishing, let's say, tablas de correspondencia, correspondence tables. Mm-hmm. Correspondence tables. So that is so you say A means 1, B means 3, C means 5, whatever. That link, that set of relationship for us is information. We can develop that kind of code. And believe me or not, in our countries, in the so-called by Immanuel Wallerstein first, the peripheral and semi-peripheral countries, the culture of the value of information is very low. I have a lot of experiences with information, but we cannot advance a little bit more by that. So, information in terms of establishing the ability of establishing relationships between experiences and codes or signs, and experiences and signs with more signs, with meta languages. Meta languages? Is correct? Meta
languages, yeah.
Meta languages. I have said a lot of times that the differences between humans and apes or dolphins is not that they manage language, and it's not that humans can handle and use instruments. The difference for me is that humans can is the only species that can develop and can construct meta instruments. Make sense that? Instruments for creating other instruments. Stone to create an arrow. That is a meta instrument. And the same thing in languages. In terms of dolphins' culture, a male dolphin to a female dolphin can perfectly, in a very high, complicated language, say, "Hey, at what time do you go for the tuna?" And they can coordinate perfectly actions to eat and whatever, stalking the flock. No, flock is probably
No.
School of
The
fish.
school of fish.
Yeah. What?
It's school.
School.
School like the school.
Okay,
Yeah.
school of fish, whatever. But the female dolphin is not able to say, "Hey, what do you mean by at what time I want to the tuna? You want some kind of relation with me?" I mean, the dolphin cannot reverse. I mean, make meta languages. Uses the language not only for refer the objects, but refer constructions of linguistics. So that's very important of information in human information. Communication, culture of communication, and nothing to do with sharing meanings. There's a common sense of sharing meanings, and even more of that with the postmodern, fashion that we are all discourses. I am a discourse. You are a discourse. We are all discourses. I'm going to deconstruct you. You are. I'm not. We cannot use signs or discourses to word. If I mean, this is not has to do with my shirt. My shirt has a trademark here whenever.
So nothing to do with Roland Barthes.
Yeah.
No. The Roland Barthes we know, but there's another Roland Barthes, the most known. But nothing to do with that. I mean, I cannot use a sign. I need to use something that is not a sign. This tissue is not sign. It's cotton with some kind of labor there. This is not a sign of meta-linguistic whatever. So, we prefer to use, in terms of studying and developing communication, the biological definition of communication, coming from from your coterráneos. Maturana and Varela, Chilean biologists that define communication in terms of coordination of actions. We are communicating if we coordinate actions. Of course, we can use meta languages for coordinating. We can use languages, but it's a very, really basic way of coordinating actions that hasn't anything to do with languages or with science. Is what's it in Spanish? In English, sorry. It's biochemical reactions. I mean, pheromones are really hard.
Okay. It's all right.
We can coordinate. I mean, our species and some of the species can coordinate actions not only by means of meanings or semantics only, but I mean in terms of coordination of actions and knowledge. The poorest of the family, the neglected part of the family, knowledge, because knowledge is not it's not like a gift. Oh, this country has the gift of the knowledge, el don. No? These countries or these people, colored people, black people, Indian people, brown people, they should be objects of study always. We are just subjects of study. They are objects of study. The thing is that knowledge is a very specific strategy for survival in terms of human species. Then, the development of knowledge adds a different set of relationships between the relationships that information creates. So knowledge is a second order complexity of information. We cannot create knowledge if we cannot create information. But we can create information without knowledge. And Cummings, in The Rock, has a beautiful poem. They say, where is the wisdom we lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we lost in information? That poem points out that specific or elementary human ability of creating knowledge. So, what has anything to do with technology? Well, that we face all of a sudden this fashion, very interesting fashion of talking about the ICTs, or in Spanish, TIC, tecnologías de información y comunicación, information communication technology, and we use it like, hey, in front of that. We're saying that every single information and communication technology is a technology of knowledge. But if we don't recognize that, and we don't, evaluate that precisely information and technology, and communication technology becomes misknowledge, desconocimiento. How to say desconocimiento? Tecnología de desconocimiento.
Ignorance.
Nothing wrong, like this ignorant, but technology of producing ignorance. If we ignore that not split part of knowledge, always, I said, every single technology of information and communication is a technology of knowledge. But if we don't recognize that, we don't see that technology becomes a technology for the production of desconocimiento, not knowledge, ignorance. It should be a word.
The thing is, ignorance has an opprobrium attached to it. It seems to be a negative thing, and it doesn't have to be negative. It can be like a zero.
Yeah.
Neither favorable nor unfavorable.
And the thing is that the relationship of our countries, our societies, and our symbolic ecologies with knowledge, communication, and information, and the tools for develop that, and the cultivation of that, and the coordination of that is really distributed badly, very uneven distributed. So, the developing Cibercultura means to facilitate the process of developing these three cultures, and we call that in a specific social set that have specific practical problems. Not just what is information, but practical problems to solve. For instance, the problem of the water. In 20 more years, will be 4,000 million people without water to drink or to planting, for for cultivation. 4,000 million people, and well, nothing to do with the Kyoto Protocol. Of course, not to do with that. But I mean, we're facing global problems, really global problems, but not perceived as global. So the people, the Indians, the Seris in Sonora. This is Baja California. Sonora is here. Seris are here in the desert and the ocean. I mean the Gulf, no water. The problem of the Seris is not, of course, the same as the problem of the people in Guadalajara, Jalisco. Nothing to do. I mean, it's not perceived like any kind of connection, because the people here and people only have, of course, local knowledge, or localized. We call conocimiento localizado, localized knowledge, and it's a kind of design. I mean, the social set of relationships and historical relationships has just pushed people just to ignore the other. Oh, it's my problem, my problem. But the knowledge, if it's able to do this thing, it's able to connect people, to coordinate people. So the image of the problem, or the solution, the practical, intelligent solutions for solving the problem of the water, solving or facing the problem of water of migration. This is the second project we have dealing with that. We think that developing Cibercultur is a key point in the development of what we call emergent local knowledge communities. Emergent local knowledge communities. A community, just a word about that. We are not supposing they are community. A community is a construction, and we can create community only if the members of the community share some kind of practical problem, a meaningful something to unite, to coordinate, and to create a sense of community. So we are trying to develop in this first phase of the study. We are facilitating 5 different experiences located dealing with ethnicity or urban, suburban, north, south in Mexico, just 5 experiences in which we are facilitating the process of creating a local, emergent local knowledge community